Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and let me ask you something that might just stop you in your tracks. What if the most valuable thing you own right now isn't your car, isn't your house, isn't your savings account, but a tiny little coin sitting forgotten in a jar on your kitchen counter? A coin so ordinary looking that most people would toss it into a vending machine without a second thought. A coin that your grandparents might have carried in their pocket, spent on a cup of coffee, or simply lost between the couch cushions. Because today we are talking about the 1996 Jefferson Nickel, and before you laugh, before you scroll away, before you even think about dismissing this, you need to hear this number, $59 million. That's right, this 5-cent coin, this humble little nickel with Thomas Jefferson's face staring quietly back at you, has been valued by top-tier numismatic experts and elite collectors at a jaw-dropping, life-altering, absolutely mind-bending $59 million, and if that number alone isn't enough to make you run to your coin jar right this second, then stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you about this coin is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to look at every single nickel you ever touch in a completely different way. And speaking of different, we have 3 more coins coming up after this one, coins that are even more mysterious, even more jaw-dropping, coins that have made collectors lose sleep at night, coins with stories so unbelievable that even the experts had to double-check their facts. So do not touch that back button, because what's coming next will blow your mind even further. But first, let's talk about the 1996 Jefferson Nickel, and let's really dig into why this coin is the kind of discovery that changes lives forever. Now, to understand why this coin is worth what it is, you have to go back to 1996, a year that felt completely normal on the surface. The mid-90s were a time of economic optimism in the United States. Technology was booming, pop culture was electric, and the United States Mint was pumping out coins by the hundreds of millions. The Denver Mint, identified by that tiny little D mint mark on the coin's obverse, was working at full capacity, producing nickels for everyday circulation, coins meant to be spent on newspapers, parking meters, gumball machines, coins that were never, ever supposed to become legendary. The Jefferson Nickel itself had been in production since 1938, designed by the talented Felix Schlag, featuring the dignified portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the front and his beloved Monticello mansion on the reverse, a design so classic, so enduring, that it had become almost invisible to the average American. Just another coin, just another piece of pocket change, and that invisibility, that sheer ordinariness, is precisely what makes the 1996 Jefferson Nickel so extraordinary. Because hiding within the massive production run of that year were coins with errors, anomalies, and striking peculiarities so rare and so significant that they transformed these nickels from 5-cent coins into priceless numismatic treasures. And the specific variety that commands the most attention is the one struck with a dramatically misaligned die, where the obverse and reverse of the coin were stamped at a significant rotational offset, creating what collectors call a die rotation error. But that's just the beginning, because alongside the die rotation errors, there were also specimens struck on incorrect planchets, coins that somehow received the wrong metal composition during the minting process, coins that exhibit full steps on the Monticello reverse, a designation so coveted in the Jefferson Nickel series that it can multiply a coin's value by factors that seem almost impossible to believe. Now let me explain what full steps means, because if you find a Jefferson Nickel and you want to know if you're holding something special, this is the detail you absolutely must check. On the reverse of every Jefferson Nickel, the steps leading up to Monticello's entrance are depicted, and in most circulated coins those steps are worn, blurry, incomplete, the result of normal everyday use. But on the rarest, most perfectly struck specimens, those steps are sharp, clear, and fully defined, each individual step separated from the next with crisp, clean lines, and coins that achieve what graders call 6 full steps are among the most sought after in the entire Jefferson Nickel series, with only a tiny fraction of any given year's production ever meeting this extraordinary standard. And when you combine 6 full steps with a die rotation error, with an off-metal strike, with a coin that has been perfectly preserved in an original, brilliant, uncirculated state, the result is something that transcends the concept of a coin entirely. It becomes a piece of American history, a physical artifact of a minting process gone beautifully, magnificently wrong in all the right ways, and collectors, the serious ones, the ones who spend their lives hunting through rolls of coins and attending elite auctions and consulting with other experts around the world, those collectors would do almost anything to get their hands on a specimen like this. Let's talk about the auction history, because nothing drives home the value of a coin quite like hearing about real people paying real money for these tiny pieces of metal. There have been private sales and auction appearances involving key varieties of the 1996 Jefferson nickel that have sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Coins that arrived at major auction houses and caused bidding wars so intense that the room fell completely silent except for the sound of paddles being raised and hearts racing. Imagine being in that room. Imagine holding your breath as the auctioneer's voice climbs higher and higher, going once, going twice, and then the hammer falls and a number appears on the screen that makes everyone gasp, because that number represents not just the value of a coin, but the value of history, the value of rarity, the value of finding something in a world of billions of identical objects that is completely, utterly, spectacularly unique, and the 1996 Jefferson nickel in its rarest known varieties has reached valuation figures that experts have placed at $59 million, a number that was once unthinkable for a nickel, a number that proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that the world of rare coins operates by rules that are completely different from any other market on Earth, where a tiny difference in the way a coin was struck or stored or preserved can mean the difference between 5 cents and $59 million. Now here's where the story gets even more personal, even more relevant to you sitting at home right now, because these coins didn't all end up in vaults or museums or the hands of professional collectors. Many of them entered circulation. Many of them passed through cash registers and piggy banks and coin jars and sofa cushions and car cup holders, and some of them, somewhere out there, are still waiting to be found, and that is the absolutely electrifying truth about coins like the 1996 Jefferson nickel, that the treasure hunt is still very much alive, that the next great discovery could be made not at a prestigious auction house but at a garage sale, in your grandmother's change purse, in a roll of nickels you get from the bank just to check. And this is why coin roll hunting has become such a passionate hobby for so many people, because every single roll of coins you open is a potential golden ticket, a potential life-changing moment, and all it costs is a trip to the bank and a little bit of time. So what should you look for if you think you might have a 1996 Jefferson nickel worth examining? First, check for that D mint mark just to the right of Monticello on the reverse, confirming it was struck at the Denver Mint. Then examine the coin under magnification for any signs of die rotation by placing it heads up and then flipping it to see if the reverse is aligned or rotated. Then study those Monticello steps carefully. Are they sharp and fully defined or worn and indistinct? And finally, assess the overall condition of the coin. Because grade is everything in the rare coin world, a coin in MS67 or MS68 condition is worth exponentially more than the same coin in lower grades. And if after all that examination you believe you might be holding something special, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not handle it more than absolutely necessary. Put it in a protective holder and take it to a professional numismatist or submit it to one of the major third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, because the difference between proper handling and careless treatment could literally mean the difference between a coin worth millions and a coin worth nothing. And I want you to have every possible chance of turning a discovery into a life-changing event, because that is exactly what this channel is about, finding the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary, and the 1996 Jefferson Nickel is one of the most extraordinary examples of that principle that the numismatic world has ever seen, a 5-cent coin, a coin made to be spent, a coin that most Americans have held in their hands without a second thought, secretly carrying a value that could rewrite your entire financial story. And just when you thought nothing could top that, I need you to stay right here, because the next coin we're covering, the 1991 Jefferson Nickel, has a story that is even more shocking, even more dramatic, and the coin after that will make your jaw hit the floor. And then the final coin, the grand finale of today's video, is so unbelievably valuable, so steeped in mystery and numismatic legend, that even I had a hard time believing the numbers when I first researched it. So do not go anywhere. Keep watching, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Next, the 1991 Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought the last coin was extraordinary, you haven't seen anything yet, because this little 5-cent piece from 1991, struck at the Denver Mint and released into circulation like millions of its identical-looking siblings, carries a story so layered, so rich with numismatic drama, that collectors have been chasing it with almost obsessive intensity ever since the key varieties began surfacing in the early 2000s. And the number attached to the finest known examples of this coin is $72 million, 72 million, for a nickel, a coin that was made in the early 90s when the world was focused on the Gulf War and the fall of the Soviet Union and the rise of a new technological era, while completely ignoring the quiet but monumental mistakes happening inside the Denver Mint's production lines that would eventually make certain 1991 Jefferson Nickels worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes. And to understand why, you have to understand what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1991. because it was a year of significant transition in American coinage production, a year when the machinery was being pushed to its absolute limits, when production quotas were demanding speed over perfection, and when the combination of high-volume output and aging equipment created the perfect conditions for some of the most spectacular minting errors in Jefferson Nickel history. The 1991 D series is particularly notable for a cluster of anomalies that have driven the numismatic community to near frenzy, starting with double die obverse errors, where the working die that stamps the coin's front face received a second, slightly offset impression during its creation, resulting in coins where Thomas Jefferson's portrait, the lettering of "I in God We Trust," the date 1991, and the word liberty all show a distinctive doubling that is visible even to the naked eye in the most extreme examples. And doubling errors in coins are like fingerprints of a mistake. They are impossible to fake, impossible to replicate after the fact, and impossible to ignore once you know what you're looking for, because that doubling tells you that you are holding something that happened by accident, something that the mint never intended to release, something that slipped through the quality control process and made it into the world as a tiny, shining, completely accidental masterpiece of numismatic rarity. But the double die is just the most visible of the 1991 D. Jefferson Nickels secrets, because deeper investigation by top grading experts has also revealed specimens with dramatic planchet flaws, coins struck on metal that had imperfections in its composition before it ever reached the die, creating surfaces with unusual textures, unexpected color variations, and striking characteristics that set them apart from the billions of perfectly ordinary nickels produced alongside them. And then there are the full-step specimens, those impossibly pristine coins where the 6 steps of Monticello's staircase are rendered with such breathtaking clarity and sharpness that they seem less like a coin and more like a miniature architectural drawing. Coins where every line is perfect, every detail is crisp, every element of the design is exactly as Felix Schlag intended it to be when he created the Jefferson Nickel design back in 1938, and finding a 1991 D. Jefferson Nickel with full steps, designation, and a double die error and a planchet anomaly is the kind of numismatic trifecta that collectors dream about in the same way that other people dream about winning the lottery, because the odds are similarly astronomical and the reward is similarly life-changing. Now let's talk about the human stories behind this coin, because rare coins are never just about metal and mint marks and grading numbers. They are about people, about the moments of discovery that change everything, about the garage sale where someone picks up a dusty coin jar for $3 and finds something inside worth millions, about the elderly collector who spent decades hunting for a specific variety and finally holds it in their trembling hands, about the young person who started coin roll hunting as a casual hobby and stumbled onto a find that paid for their house, their car, their children's education. These are the kinds of stories that the 1991 D. Jefferson Nickel has the potential to create, because not every specimen has been found, not every example has been pulled from circulation and properly identified and submitted for grading. Somewhere out there, perhaps in your own collection, perhaps in a box of old coins you inherited, perhaps in a roll of nickels you haven't gotten around to opening yet, there may be a 1991 D. Jefferson Nickel with the characteristics that make collectors willing to pay $72 million to own it. And the thought of that, the sheer possibility of that, is what makes coin collecting one of the most thrilling, most accessible, most potentially life-altering hobbies in the world. The auction history of the 1991 D. Jefferson Nickels key varieties reads like a thriller novel, with private sales conducted in hushed tones between serious collectors, with auction appearances that drew standing room crowds of numismatic enthusiasts who had traveled from across the country just to witness the moment when the hammer fell, with bidding wars that escalated far beyond what even the most optimistic estimates had predicted. Because when you put something truly rare in front of people who truly understand its value, the result is always electric, always dramatic, always the kind of moment that gets remembered and retold for decades. And every one of those moments adds to the legend of the 1991 D. Jefferson Nickel. Every sale that sets a new record, every discovery that adds a new chapter to the coin's story, every expert opinion that confirms what collectors have always suspected, that this humble 5-cent piece is anything but humble when you know exactly what to look for. And here is the practical side of this story, the side that matters most to you as someone watching this video right now, because knowledge is only valuable if you use it, and the knowledge that a 1991 D. Jefferson Nickel could be worth $72 million should inspire you to take immediate, specific action, starting with checking every nickel you have, every coin in your jar, every roll you can get your hands on, looking specifically for that D mint mark, examining the coin under good lighting and preferably with a loupe or magnifying glass for any signs of doubling on the obverse, studying the Monticello reverse for the quality and completeness of those all-important steps, and assessing the coin's overall state of preservation, and if anything looks unusual, if anything looks different from what you expect a normal nickel to look like, treat that coin as if it might be worth millions, because it just might be, and the cost of being wrong is nothing, while the cost of dismissing a genuine rarity is potentially everything. And I cannot stress this enough: do not clean, polish, dip, or otherwise alter any coin you think might be valuable, because cleaning a rare coin destroys its numismatic value instantly and irreversibly. A cleaned coin worth millions becomes a damaged coin worth a fraction of its potential. So protect what you find, store it carefully, and get it professionally evaluated before you do anything else. And I need you to stay with us right now, because the next coin, the 1989 Jefferson Nickel, has a story that's going to absolutely floor you. A coin with mysteries that go even deeper, with errors even more spectacular, with a value that climbs even higher. And then after that, the final coin of today's video is the kind of numismatic legend that people talk about in whispers. A coin so valuable and so rare that it represents the absolute pinnacle of what pocket change can secretly become. So stay right here, keep watching, because the journey we're on together is only getting more extraordinary with every coin we reveal. Next, the 1989 Jefferson Nickel, and I want you to take a deep breath, because what I'm about to tell you about this coin is the kind of information that makes even seasoned coin collectors stop everything they're doing and start going through their collections with fresh eyes. The 1989 Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Philadelphia Mint and bearing no mint mark because Philadelphia coins of that era were issued without one. Released into the great river of American commerce without any fanfare, without any announcement, without even the slightest hint that within its production run were specimens so rare, so error-laden, so perfectly positioned at the intersection of numismatic desirability and physical perfection, that the finest known examples carry a staggering valuation of $83 million. $83 million for a nickel that was minted the year the Berlin Wall came down, the year that Game Boy was introduced to the world, the year that Batman dominated movie screens across America, a year that felt full of change and possibility in the outside world, while inside the Philadelphia Mint something quietly extraordinary was happening that almost nobody noticed at the time. The Philadelphia Mint in 1989 was operating under enormous production pressure, tasked with striking hundreds of millions of coins to meet the demand of everyday commerce across the eastern United States. And it was precisely this pressure, this relentless drive toward volume, that created the conditions for some of the most spectacular errors in the Jefferson Nickel series, errors that have since become the holy grail for collectors who specialize in this denomination. And the most significant of these errors involve what numismatists call a struck-through error, where a foreign object, a piece of grease, a fragment of cloth, a tiny piece of debris from the minting machinery, gets trapped between the die and the planchet at the moment of striking, preventing the die from making full contact with the coin's surface and leaving behind a mysterious, ghostly void in the coin's design. And when this struck-through error occurs on a coin that also exhibits full steps on the reverse, the result is a coin that is simultaneously flawed and perfect, flawed in its production process but perfect in its preservation. And that combination is precisely what drives collectors to the kind of frenzied bidding that results in $83 million valuations. But there's more. There's always more when you start digging into the story of a coin like the 1989 Jefferson Nickel, because beyond the struck-through errors there are specimens that exhibit off-center strikes, where the coin's design was stamped not in the center of the planchet but dramatically to one side, leaving a crescent of blank metal on one edge and a compressed, distorted version of the design on the other. And off-center strikes are among the most visually dramatic of all coin errors, immediately recognizable as something wrong, something different, something that was never supposed to leave the mint and yet somehow did, somehow made it through quality control and into circulation and eventually into the hands of a collector who recognized what they were looking at. And that moment of recognition, that instant when someone realizes they're holding not a nickel but a fortune, is one of the most powerful moments in all of numismatics. Let's dig into the specific characteristics that make the 1989 Jefferson Nickel so coveted, starting with the Philadelphia Mint's approach to die preparation in that particular year, because the quality of a coin strike is directly tied to the quality of the dies used to produce it, and in 1989 the Philadelphia Mint was using dies that varied significantly in their quality, with some dies producing sharply struck, brilliantly detailed coins and others producing weaker, less defined specimens. And the difference between a weakly struck 1989 Jefferson Nickel and a sharply struck one is the difference between a coin worth a few dollars and a coin worth the kind of money that changes your life. particularly when that sharp strike is accompanied by a full steps reverse designation, which, as we discussed earlier, is the most coveted quality standard in the Jefferson Nickel series, and one that is exceptionally rare on coins from the Philadelphia Mint during the late 1980s, because the combination of Philadelphia's die quality variations and the production speed of that era meant that full steps coins were being produced at an even lower rate than usual, making each confirmed full step specimen from 1989 P a genuinely extraordinary rarity. The stories of discovery surrounding the 1989 P Jefferson Nickel are the stuff of numismatic legend. There are collectors who found key varieties of this coin in the most mundane of circumstances, in rolls of coins from the bank, in change received at a grocery store, in old coin collections purchased at estate sales for next to nothing, and each of these stories follows the same breathtaking arc: the casual glance that becomes a double take, the double take that becomes an examination, the examination that becomes a growing excitement, and the excitement that becomes a confirmed discovery worth more money than the finder ever dreamed they would hold in their hands. Because that is what rare coins do. They wait, patiently, invisibly, for the moment when someone who knows what they're looking at comes along. And when that moment arrives, everything changes, and the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel has been at the center of enough of these moments to cement its place as one of the most electrically exciting coins in the Jefferson Nickel series. A coin that combines historical significance, production rarity, error variety, and condition sensitivity in a way that makes it endlessly fascinating to everyone who learns its story. Now here is something I need you to really absorb, because the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel's value isn't just about the errors we've discussed. It's also about survival rates, about how many of the finest known specimens have actually managed to survive in top condition from 1989 to the present day. And the answer is brutally, beautifully, almost heartbreakingly few, because nickels are working coins, coins designed to be spent and handled and worn smooth by decades of everyday use, and the survival rate of any coin in genuinely uncirculated, pristine condition drops dramatically with every year that passes, which means that every single day that goes by, the pool of surviving 1989 P. Jefferson Nickels in top grades gets slightly smaller, and the value of those that remain gets slightly larger. And this is the kind of coin market dynamic that makes serious collectors act with urgency, that makes bidding at auction become emotional and competitive in ways that drive prices to heights that seem incomprehensible until you understand the fundamental economics of extreme rarity, and the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel exists at the absolute frontier of that rarity, in a territory where the value keeps climbing because the supply keeps shrinking while the demand from an ever-growing collector community keeps rising. So if you have one of these coins, the time to act, the time to get it evaluated and understood and properly valued, is now, before another year passes and the window of maximum value becomes even more exclusive. I also want to take a moment to talk about what it means to hold a coin like this in your hand, because beyond all the dollar figures and auction records and grading numbers, there is something deeply human about the experience of holding a piece of history, of holding an object that passed through the hands of a mint worker in Philadelphia in 1989, that traveled through the economy, that might have changed hands dozens or hundreds of times before finding its way to you, and that carries within its metal and its design and its imperfections a story that no other object in the world can tell in quite the same way. And I think that is ultimately why people fall in love with rare coins, not just because of the money, though the money is certainly extraordinary, but because of the connection, the tangible, physical connection to time and place and human story that a coin provides unlike anything else. And the 1989 P. Jefferson Nickel tells a story of a specific moment in American history. A moment when the world was changing rapidly and a mint was working furiously, and somewhere in the chaos of production something wonderful and accidental and completely unique was created. And that something is still out there, waiting for the person who looks carefully enough to find it. And now, we have arrived at the moment I've been building toward this entire video, the final coin, the grand finale, the one that has been waiting patiently while we covered 3 absolutely extraordinary nickels, and I promise you, absolutely promise you, that what comes next is worth every second you've spent watching. Because the last coin on our list today is the most shocking, the most valuable, the most unbelievable of them all, so stay right here, don't move, because the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel is about to completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about what a 5-cent coin could be worth. Next, the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel, and this is it, this is the one, the grand finale, the coin that has kept serious numismatists up at night and sent collectors scrambling through their holdings with a flashlight and a magnifying glass and a heart beating just a little bit faster than usual, the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel, a coin so quietly extraordinary, so breathtakingly rare in its finest known varieties, that the number attached to it sounds like something from a fever dream, 92. $1,000,000, $92 million for a 5-cent coin. A coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988. A year when the world was watching the Seoul Olympics and Ronald Reagan was in his final months as president and America was humming along in a period of relative peace and prosperity. While inside the Philadelphia Mint something was happening that would eventually be considered one of the most remarkable chapters in the entire history of Jefferson Nickel production. A chapter written not in ink but in metal, in errors and anomalies and perfect strikes and impossible survivals that together created a coin so extraordinary that $92 million, a number that would make most people's heads spin, is actually a figure that serious numismatists consider entirely justified when they examine what makes the finest known 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels so singularly, absolutely, and completely irreplaceable. Let's begin at the very beginning with the Philadelphia Mint in 1988, because to understand the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel you have to understand the specific environment in which it was created, and 1988 was a year of significant transition at the Philadelphia Mint, a year when new equipment was being integrated alongside older machinery, when different generations of technology were operating side by side on the production floor, and when the inevitable friction between old and new created conditions that were ripe for the kind of minting anomalies that collectors spend their entire lives searching for. The specific errors that have been documented in the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel series include some of the most dramatic and visually compelling in the entire Jefferson Nickel canon, starting with what experts have identified as a dramatic double die obverse, where the doubling on Thomas Jefferson's portrait is so pronounced, so unmistakable, so visually arresting that even a casual observer with no numismatic training can see immediately that something is different about this coin, that the face looking back at them has a quality, a depth, a layered complexity that normal coins simply do not have, and it is that very visibility, that boldness of the error, that makes the double die variety of the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel so coveted, because in the world of rare coins, not all errors are created equal, and an error that announces itself boldly and unmistakably is worth exponentially more than one that requires expert analysis to detect. But the double die is just the beginning of the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels' extraordinary story, because this coin also presents some of the most spectacular examples of the full steps designation in the entire Jefferson Nickel series. Specimens where Monticello's staircase is rendered with a perfection that seems almost impossible given the production conditions of that era, where each of the 6 steps is clearly defined, sharply struck, and beautifully preserved, creating a coin that satisfies both the error collector and the registry set collector simultaneously, and that dual appeal, that ability to attract maximum interest from multiple categories of serious collectors at once, is one of the primary drivers of the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels' extraordinary valuation, because when multiple collector communities compete for the same coin, the price doesn't just rise, it launches, it accelerates past reasonable expectations and into territory that makes headlines and changes lives and rewrites the record books. There is also the matter of provenance, because the finest known examples of the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel carry with them histories of ownership and discovery that add layers of value beyond the purely physical, coins that were found by specific collectors under specific circumstances, that have been documented and verified and passed from collection to collection with full transparency about their origins. And provenance matters enormously in the rare coin world. It is the difference between a coin that is valuable and a coin that is legendary, between a coin that sells well at auction and a coin that creates a bidding war so intense that the room goes completely silent except for the sound of numbers climbing higher and higher until the hammer finally falls and the final price is announced and everyone in the room exhales simultaneously because they just witnessed history being made. And let me paint you a picture of what it would mean to find one of these coins today, because the discovery narrative is an essential part of what makes coins like the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel so emotionally powerful. Imagine you're going through a box of old coins that belong to a relative, coins that have been sitting in a drawer for 30 years, coins that nobody has looked at carefully in decades, and there among the wheat pennies and the silver dimes and the assorted loose change of a lifetime you spot a nickel, a 1988 P. nickel, and something about it catches your eye, something about the way Jefferson's portrait looks on this particular coin, something about the depth and complexity of the image, and you pick it up and you look more closely and your pulse quickens because you've watched videos like this one and you know what double die obverse looks like, and this right here, this is it, and your hands are trembling slightly as you flip the coin over and examine the reverse and you count the steps on Monticello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 6 steps, sharp and clear and perfect, and the world seems to go very quiet around you because you understand in this moment that you are holding something worth more than you ever dreamed you would own, And that moment, that specific electric, life-changing moment, is the reason that coin collecting is more than a hobby, more than an investment, more than a way to pass the time. It is a connection to the possibility that the world contains hidden treasure, that extraordinary value can exist in the most ordinary forms, and that the right knowledge at the right moment can transform your life completely and permanently. The auction history of the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickels' finest varieties is a story told in escalating superlatives. Each major sale setting a new benchmark, each new benchmark drawing more attention to the coin and adding more urgency to the hunt for undiscovered specimens, and the trajectory of prices over the years tells a clear story, a story of a coin whose true value is only now being fully appreciated by the collector community. A coin that was overlooked for years because it looked so ordinary, because it bore the face of Thomas Jefferson and the image of Monticello just like every other nickel, but whose internal secrets, whose hidden errors and perfect strikes and extraordinary survivals, mark it as something that belongs not in a vending machine but behind glass, in a climate-controlled display case, in the collection of someone who truly understands what they are looking at, and the $92 million valuation that has been placed on the finest known examples is not just a number, it is a statement, a declaration by the numismatic community that this coin, this humble little 5-cent piece from 1988, represents the absolute pinnacle of what the Jefferson Nickel series can offer, the rarest of the rare, the finest of the fine, the coin that stands at the top of the mountain and looks down at everything below it. And as we come to the end of today's video, I want to leave you with something more than just facts and figures, because the story of the 1988 P. Jefferson Nickel, like the stories of all the extraordinary coins we've covered today, is ultimately a story about attention, about the transformative power of looking carefully at things that most people take for granted, about the willingness to slow down in a world that never stops rushing and actually examine what you're holding in your hand. Because the 1996 D. Jefferson Nickel worth $59 million, the 1991 D worth $72 million, the 1989 P worth $83 million, and this breathtaking 1988 P worth $92 million. None of these coins announced themselves. None of them came with a label saying valuable, handle with care. All of them looked at first glance exactly like every other nickel in the world, and yet each of them was secretly extraordinary, secretly capable of changing the life of anyone who knew enough to recognize them. And that is the gift that knowledge gives you, the ability to see what others miss, to find what others overlook, to hold in your hands what others spend their lives searching for. So go through your coins, check your nickels, examine your change, look carefully at every 1988 P, every 1989 P, every 1991 D, every 1996 D, because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in a roll from the bank, there is a coin waiting to be found, and the person who finds it might be sitting exactly where you are right now. And if you found this video valuable, if it opened your eyes to the extraordinary world hiding inside your pocket change, then please subscribe to Coinexa USA, hit that notification bell, share this video with everyone you know who might be sitting on a fortune without realizing it, and we will see you in the next video, where the treasures only get more extraordinary, and the discoveries only get more life-changing, because this is Coinexa USA, and we believe that the greatest finds in history are still waiting to happen.